Hi everyone. We're live on X Spaces and on YouTube. So on both platforms, this is Eternal Iran. So Eternal Iran it's on the back of Successful Iranians podcast. I created this a while back. The Successful Iranians podcast, I think, ranked in the top 10% of podcasts at the time. It was to highlight the great and the good of the community, and then following on from that, created a YouTube channel called Eternal Iran, and now bringing Iran situation rooms, Iran emergency spaces to this channel. So I'm in my kind of summer office house, as you were, man cave, some people describe it. So we're talking all things Iran, and this is a emergency space talking about a lot that has happened since I last spoke to you. So I last spoke to you last weekend, and we were wondering, evaluating the stuff that Trump had said in terms of the deadline, which was Tuesday night, about the tweets that he had sent out on Truth Social at 8 p.m. Eastern time. If the Islamic Republic doesn't open up the Strait of Hormuz or does a deal, then a whole civilization will be wiped out. And then thereafter, we had a lot of anxiety, a lot of wait, people holding their breath to see what was going to go on. Would he actually go through? Would the US actually do it in terms of hitting the Islamic Republic hard? Look, most Iranians with a heavy heart, they don't want the infrastructure to be touched. There are rather other avenues to be hit. However, if it's a choice whereby it's the end of the regime and the mullahs, but the infrastructure needs to be taken out somewhat, with a heavy heart, a lot of Iranians will accept that because they just want the end of the regime. And then everyone was building up to it on Tuesday night. Everyone was looking at their phones, was looking at hearing from friends, family, what's going to go on? Is it going to happen? And the countdown carried on, and then further tweets came out on Truth Social saying 4 hours to make a deal. And then suddenly we started to hear stuff around Pakistan, who's become the new Qatar without the money. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan helping the Islamic Republic. And there was some mutterings about a potential ceasefire, talking about an agreement to have a ceasefire with the Islamic Republic, the US, and consequently with Israel. If the US agreed to ceasefire, then Israel would then agree a ceasefire. Well, not automatically, but that's how it kind of works when it comes to the Islamic Republic of Iran. So it was a situation where a lot of people were on tenterhooks thinking, is it happening? Is it not? Then there were other people that have Trump derangement syndrome saying, no, he's going to do a taco. This was a Democratic line put out, taco, Trump always chickens out, in reference to things that has happened before, like tariffs and other aspects where last minute changes. But it looked like for 1 minute that this was building up, and the Islamic Republic then started to try to form human kind of chains around power plants. Because remember the tweet by Trump on Truth Social, he talked about Power Plant Tuesday and Bridge Tuesday. So it was going to be a power plant and bridge Tuesday, both combined, on that particular time, around 8 p.m. onwards. So they tried to form human shields, etc. He had Ghalibaf saying he's going to be martyr, and he put his number down, trying to do these campaigns, etc. People don't realize those human shields aren't Iranians. Just want to call it out for what it is. That they're from Iran, but they're pro-regime, and they're from either the regime in terms of the Basij, just put on their civilian clothes, etc. And there is a minority of Iranians that I would say about 3 to 4%, 5% max, that may in some way still want this regime. People get alarmed by that because they then look at their calculators and they see 90 million Iranians and they think, oh my God, if it's 3 to 5%, then it must be all these, this could be hundreds of thousands of Iranians that we're dealing with. But the reality is, as soon as this regime ends and loses, the vast majority, I'd say the 98, 99% of them would be defeated and they would go away. There might be a minority, a small minority that would try to still put up some kind of resurgence campaign, but the vast majority of them would melt away. Because remember this quote, and it's one of the most profound quotes, and I think it's so real, that victory is spoken about, is told by 1,000 fathers. Orphan, defeat is an orphan. Victory is said by 1,000 fathers. Defeat is an orphan. Something like that. Anyway, I did have the quote much better beforehand, but it's been a long day, but I'm doing my bit when it comes to all eyes and ears on Iran. So let's get into the analysis. The time was ticking. It was Tuesday. 8 o'clock was ticking. Truth Social was ticking. The Islamic Republic was ticking. And Iranians were absolutely on edge. There were phone calls at times by Iranians to other Iranians, to families, etc., saying goodbyes or if I don't hear from you next. But there was a steely determination. The steely determination was the acceptance that whatever it takes to end this regime, whatever it takes, even if it meant the infrastructure. Don't want it from a nationalist perspective, from a love of Iran perspective. You want to keep all your infrastructure, but with a heavy heart, most would accept it if it meant the end of this regime. That's the reality of what you're dealing with. The Iranians are desperate to end this regime. The majority, this 47-year nightmare. So everyone was on edge. And then suddenly it seemed more and more likely that it wasn't going to happen. And it was more likely a ceasefire was going to happen. And then came the post on Truth Social. I think it was about, what, an hour, maybe a little bit more, before the deadline, saying about a ceasefire, 2 weeks, has been agreed that they will be meeting the Islamic Republic, talked about a peace deal with this new regime, etc. And a lot of Iranians, it was like a weight had been fallen down on their head. And it sounds so strange to say that, even because when times like this, right, when it comes to your country, normally you rally around the flag. Normally it's one for all for one. But people don't realize this is an anti-Iranian, anti-Iran occupation. And this occupation has been holding hostage Iranians for 47 years. So that sense of bitter disappointment and sadness to a lot of Iranians when they saw that tweet with the ceasefire, because they thought, oh no, ceasefire, 2 weeks. They remember the 12-day war, for example. What does this mean? Does this now mean they survive? So the vast majority of Iranians were very sad and felt gutted. They felt like that the regime had got away with it and had managed to somehow slip out and be able to put themselves in a position to have negotiations and this ceasefire. Because normally when they have these ceasefires, apart from with Hamas, they kind of stick and hold, and they just carry on. And a lot of times they don't even have an agreement. So the despondency afterwards was big within the Iranian community and the Jewish community in Israel, because a lot of people in Israel were saying things like, well, why did I, you know, night after night in shelters, everything else, and the casualties and what's happened, for what? For that? Most people in Israel, it seems like, by the way, I'm not Jewish. I'm half British, half Iranian. Just saying. And the vast majority of Iranians have a lot of commonality with Jewish people and Israel, because it goes back to the Queen Esther times. It goes back to the time of the Shah, when Iran and Israel were friends. Iran and Israel have a long history of friendship. And it's only these 47 years that put that darkness. People don't realize that the biggest community outside of Israel of Jews was in Iran. I think around 100,000. Might be wrong, but around 100,000 Jewish people lived in Iran. They made a massive contribution to Iran. And then I think it's gone down to about 5,000. And a lot of Iranian Jews went to Israel. So there's a big community of Iranian Jews in Israel. There's streets named after Persian kings in Israel. So the relationship has always been there with Jewish people and Iranians. That's why you'll find a lot of Iranians on marches supporting Israel, and Israeli and Jewish people coming to support Iranians. Yes, there are a minority of Iranians that don't support Israel, that they're pro-Palestine. But the vast majority of Iranians, when you refer to that question, have given their answer. They say, my life is neither for Lebanon, Gaza. My life is for Iran. On those lines. Because for 47 years, the money of Iran has been squandered on Hamas, Hezbollah, on Yemen, on Iraq. And Iran isn't tired of it. They want peace, they want hope, they want prosperity, they want to be a normal country again, they want to be Iran again. They want friendships rekindled again. Like with Israel, like with the United States. Look back prior to 1979. Iran was a great friend to the United States and to Israel. It was a great friend to every country, really. It was a forward-thinking country that was on the rise. It was going to be in the top 5 countries in the world in terms of GDP. A 25-year plan. The economy was great. It had its ups and downs, but 70 reals to the dollar. Now, when you go to the toilet, that toilet paper is worth more than the Iranian real. You just look on YouTube. There's so many videos. That's why Iranians are so nostalgic. The most nostalgic nationality of all, because they remember what they had. They remember who they were. And these 47 years of darkness has clouded a lot of them. So it came to a point where this 47 years and this, it's been over a month? I can't believe it, in terms of this conflict, this war with the Islamic Republic, in terms of US and Israel. What Iranians describe as a rescue mission, a liberation. And it was kind of building up to that moment on Tuesday. Again, all with a heavy heart. It's a hard place to be an Iranian, that you're so desperate for freedom. Not desperate in a negative way. You just want to be free and not be held captive in this open prison. So the despondency was big. And Then thereafter, last week, we had I think Trump had a meeting with NATO, expressed his dissatisfaction with NATO, said he was going to pull out of NATO, and that he expected help to some degree in terms of opening up the Strait of Hormuz, which hasn't been coming. NATO would argue that they're a defensive organization, so they're not an offensive organization, and that Article 5, which is an attack on one is an attack on all, can't be done. I think it was done with 9/11 when they invoked that Article 5, I think. And the European countries, from an American perspective, feel bitterly let down. Their argument is, look, we came to the aid of you guys with Russia against Ukraine, and I've been pro-Ukraine. But yet, when it came to the Islamic Republic, you're not to be seen. That countries were shutting down their airspace, from Austria to Spain to even Switzerland. Even the United Kingdom would only allow it for defensive capabilities, not offensive. Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, said it's because it's against international law. You know, international law, it sounds brilliant, it sounds wonderful, it sounds great. And we all would agree to that in principle. But as the United Nations has shown, it's garbage in a lot of ways. It gets manipulated, gets weaponized. You know, team humanity has become a weaponized word. De-escalation has become a weaponized word. And the United Nations has been weaponized by dictators and tyrannical regimes, where the regime has weaponized it. Bad actors have weaponized it, where that Secretary General, that Guterres or whatever he's called, I mean, this guy, he's a piece of work. He condemns unequivocally stuff when it comes to conflicts and stuff around Israel versus Lebanon or things around Hamas, but yet goes silent and doesn't say much when it comes to the massacre of January 8th and 9th, the second worst massacre since Rwanda. Yeah, it doesn't unequivocally condemn that. That's why people are fed up with the United Nations. And this is what happened back in the Nazis' times, when there was what was called the League of Nations, and it was deemed not fit for purpose. And I think we've reached that point with the United Nations, not fit for purpose at all. So Trump and the US feel very aggrieved because I think they contribute, 65% to NATO? Something like that, right? Something like that. And they are a major partner. And to be honest, without the US, I think the US actually created NATO. As in Trump's words, they're a paper tiger. And the strains on relationships with the United Kingdom in terms of Starmer, not in terms of UK per se, but in terms of Starmer and the Trump administration has really been fraught. And it's amazing, right? UK has always been the first, shoulder to shoulder with the US on nearly every single conflict. This time has been missing in action. So we've had also countries like Spain with Ayatollah Pedro Sanchez, I think he's called, the Marxist. Spain's a great country, beautiful country, lovely food, beautiful people, disgusting government, who's now wanting to open up its embassy in Tehran, and who has, I think, made some side deals, allegedly, in terms of the Strait of Hormuz and energy flows. And then Macron the jerk. France, again, fantastic country, not so hot on their food. I know everybody likes it. I'll take a good Italian over a good French restaurant any day. Put that to one side. Macron has made a deal with the regime, allegedly, of getting oil through the Strait of Hormuz. And it gets worse. Bahrain put in a resolution to the United Nations, the broken nations of the United Nations, to authorize military force to open up the Strait of Hormuz, because it's become economic terrorism, right? It's holding the world to hostage, causing economic pain. We've had economic pain because of COVID, because of the Ukraine war, energy prices, rising inflation, rising interest rates. And that's been a key strategy for the Islamic Republic. And the usual suspects voted it down, like Russia and China. You expect that. It's always the same, isn't it? But guess who else voted it down? France. France voted it down. Can you believe it? So that will happen as well during the whole course of this week. It's been a long week in some ways. And then the aftermath of this ceasefire. So the 10-point plan is the one that the Islamic Republic keep talking about, right? I'm going to look it up again exactly. The 10-point plan that the Islamic Republic say is the basis of the actual ceasefire. They're convinced on it. They're convinced that the 10-point plan is the basis of the actual ceasefire, right? The US, the Trump administration say, no, that's not the actual, what we agreed on in terms of the basis of the ceasefire at all. In fact, it's completely different. But they haven't quite said what exactly is. I know I think Trump tweeted a 15-point plan. I think he put that up. So Trump put up the 15-point plan, but they, the Islamic Republic, say this is the foundation of the ceasefire, it's the 10-point plan. And now I'm going to give you details of the 10-point plan. Number one, guarantee of non-aggression, a fundamental commitment from the US to halt hostilities permanently and guarantee no future attacks against Iran. Number two, control of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran maintains, they say Iran, but we know what they're referring to, maintains regulated control over the waterway, including secure passage protocols and potentially charging transit fees for reconstruction funds, which is exactly what they've been doing. I think the going rate is $2 million. Number three, although I heard the latest is that in fact they've got like a equity scheme of $1 per barrel, I think. And they want it all in crypto. Number three, recognition of uranium enrichment, acceptance by the international community and the US of Iran's right to enrich uranium for its nuclear program. Number four, lifting of primary sanctions, immediate removal of all direct US sanctions and trade restrictions. Number five, lifting of secondary sanctions, removal of penalties against third-party countries or companies that conduct business with Iran. Number six, termination of UNSC resolutions, ending all binding United Nations Security Council resolutions related to Iran's nuclear program and past compliance issues. Number seven, termination of IAEA resolutions, halting all International Atomic Energy Agency Board of Governors resolutions, effectively ending current intrusive inspection regimes. Number eight, compensation for damages, payment of reparations to Iran for infrastructure and economic damage sustained during the conflict. Number nine, US military withdrawal, complete withdrawal of US combat forces from all bases and deployments within the Middle East. Number 10, cessation of hostilities on all fronts, a comprehensive end to the war, including operations against regional allies, specifically the Axis of Resistance and Hezbollah in Lebanon. So the negotiations are mediated by the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. They're scheduled in Islamabad tomorrow. Some reports said they had gone. Other reports said, no, they haven't gone. Then you have Galabaf, who's tweeting away, loves a bit of a tweet, even though he denies, and they deny, the whole nation of Iran tweets, because there's an internet blackout that people forget, which is an inalienable human right now, really, to have the internet. Is a basic human right, I would argue strongly. And that tweet was he was doing he did an image of a timer saying 1 hour to go, and we demand that to have a complete ceasefire of Lebanon before we go and enter these talks. Otherwise, we're not coming. We're not coming if there's no ceasefire with Lebanon. Right? It's either our way or no way. It's either our way or no way. So he then put out that tweet repeatedly, and then so did the foreign secretary, and so did the foreign secretary ministry, where they were talking about that Lebanon and Israel had violated the ceasefire agreement by striking Lebanon, and that needs to stop, and it needs to be a ceasefire before they even contemplate coming to Islamabad tomorrow for these talks. So there was then a lot of talk from others where France said, yeah, you've got to include Lebanon in the ceasefire. Then Starmer said, you've got to include Lebanon in the ceasefire as well. And then Starmer made his trip to the Middle East, meeting UAE, Saudi, etc. Mr. Penfold himself. So those were the pressure points added. And then Vance was the man who's been involved in this ceasefire, this temporary ceasefire, allegedly. And he's the man who's going to be leading the negotiation team. He's been accompanied by Kushner, the son-in-law of Trump, Jared Kushner, who served in the first Trump administration, and Steve Witkoff. So he said prior, the Islamic Republic, he refers it to Iran, got the wrong end of the stick, Lebanon was never included, etc. We hope to make a deal and to have a ceasefire done, and I'm sure Israel will check themselves a bit in regard to Lebanon. Laying the ground, kind of. So the Islamic Republic reinforced these points because when they smell weakness, they go for it. So if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. It's exactly their nature. Their nature is their nature. It's the frog and scorpion. Look at that analogy. Your nature's your nature. So they kept pressing the point, and then, according to reports, Trump had a phone call with Netanyahu, and it was agreed that no, they won't be in a ceasefire with Lebanon, but Israel would be open to holding direct negotiations with Lebanon. Hezbollah rejected. And then at that point, Trump, I think, came out with a tweet or said something that, or reported to have said that Israel will kind of do things in a low-key way. It won't be that big. I think there was a big attack on Lebanon 2 days ago. God, time goes by from one day to the next. where he took out about 300 Hezbollah and also IRGC folk out in one, because they got wind that there was going to be a coup in Lebanon. And it was going to be a coup in the favor of the Islamic Republic and Hezbollah. And they took them all out. It was a huge attack. So I think Israel and Bibi, in terms of good faith, said that they would dial it in a little bit because they wanted to be a good ally to the US and to help as much as possible in these talks. So someone's saying in the chat, is this on X2? I didn't see it pop up. Yeah, I think it is. Let me check my phone. Hold on. Is it on? Yeah, I see my face. Johnny Nash. It is. So, can you retweet the space and everything else, folks, if you're on X, to get ears and eyes? And also, if you want to come up, let me know and I'll send you through the link to come up on stage, etc. At the moment, we've got about 345 people that's viewing this live, both on X and on YouTube. So the Islamic Republic kept pressing the point, and Ghalibaf kept pressing the point. And then the Wall Street Journal, I think yesterday evening, talked about how the delegation of the Islamic Republic had arrived in Islamabad. And then that was denied, I think, by Fars News Agency and the Islamic Republic media outfits that said, no, we're still having some chala kebab. Which is, I'm not a big meat eater, but if you're going to go for kebab, that is the daddy, right? Chala kebab bark is my favorite. And like I said, I'm not a big meat eater, but that would convert a vegetarian. Iranian food, honestly, the best. So as of now, I don't think the Islamic Republic is in Islamabad. Vance has left because he went on Air Force 2. Didn't realize there was Air Force 2, but there is. And then he talked about, gave a warning in one sense that if the Islamic Republic plays games, they shouldn't play games with Trump when we won't be very receptive of it. Look, there's a massive question mark on Vance. I'm not a big fan at all on Vance. Vance, I don't know the guy personally, but in terms of what he stands for, etc. Vance is reported to be a besties with Tucker Carlson, rather. And he's an isolationist. He was allegedly against any kind of being involved in any of this, etc. And I think on foreign policy, he gets it badly wrong on so many levels. I think he was against a lot of things. I think he was maybe even against Maduro, Venezuela. Don't quote me on that. But so he's leading the negotiations, and a lot of Iranians just don't have a good feeling for him at all. Pro Marco Rubio, absolutely. He totally gets it. Marco Rubio is outstanding. Could go down, probably will go down as the greatest Secretary of State of all time, right? And there's a big campaign for Rubio 2028 as opposed to Vance. So Vance leading the negotiations sends a shiver down most spines of Iranians. And I think as well, Israelis. I don't know if they're a big fan. I can't comment much on that, but I don't know if they're a big fan of Vance either. So, because he's also viewed as maybe less pro-Israeli, pro-Israel, I think, from an Israeli perspective, Vance, as opposed to Marco Rubio, who is. And he's been consistent when it comes to the Islamic Republic and Israel and all of this, because he's really, really smart. So there was a video of him coming to the cameras, leading the delegation with Kushner and with Wickoff. I can't believe that I've got to a point. Can you believe this? That I would reach a point in saying, I want Wickoff back. Wickoff, which a lot of Iranians were very down on. I was as well. Absolutely. Right? Because reportedly or allegedly links with Qatar, and Qatar seems to be what was back then a brother from another mother with the Islamic Republic, saving the Islamic Republic. They're fallen out now because they've been repeatedly hitting them. Friends like these, who needs enemies, eh? Absolutely, all these GCC countries who are trying to save the Islamic Republic now have been repeatedly hit by the Islamic Republic, because it goes back to that frog and scorpion. Your nature is your nature. So they, in terms of Vance, not a big fan, not a big fan at all, and they and worried that whatever he comes back with would be awful, terrible. So according to Vance, the parameters have been set, the guidelines have been set by Trump on this anyhow, as they go into these negotiations. And with that, he does have Kushner and Wickoff attending, although he's the lead negotiator. So it says here, someone says here on the chat, Vance is being set up to fail. Yeah, I've heard this. And I think it might be a smart point, in fact. There could be legs to that argument. Because he represents the wing, MAGA, according to polls, 94% support Trump. I saw a poll on Tucker Carlson, where his support in terms of opinion polls, people think in terms of Republicans, has gone down from 40. It's gone down 47%. So massively gone down. And he, Tucker Carlson is, that guy, serious question marks. Let's put it that way. Serious question marks. Absolutely a disgrace. You have Mark Levine, who's excellent, and then you have Tucker Carlson. And MAGA, 94% of which support what's going on with the Islamic Republic, according to polls. At one point it was 100%, but not 94%. And this poll was done by CNN, as Trump refers them to, fake news CNN. So they're accompanying Vance with these negotiations. According to reports, Trump saw the 10-point plan and threw it in the bin of the Islamic Republic. But the Islamic Republic have been beating the drum that no. The 10-point plan, is the basis to this ceasefire. Trump, I think, did retweet the 15-point plan. And then some people say, oh, did Pakistan do it dirty? Did Pakistan send one plan to the Islamic Republic saying, yeah, they agreed to your 10-point plan? Then to the US saying the Islamic Republic has agreed to your 15-point plan? I would find that farcical. I don't buy it. The US say they've agreed something privately quite different. But they don't quite say it, what they've agreed to either, fully, apart from that retweet on Truth Social talking about the 15-point plan. So, there's an information war going on as well in all conflicts, right? PSYOPs and information war, etc. The Islamic Republic lie continuously. So you always go to the point of the US. But then the US also will have some element of propaganda. Every country does in conflict like this. But you always veer to that side as opposed to the Islamic Republic. Sometimes once or twice they get it right, but generally speaking, they lie in every day that doesn't end in Y. So we get to a point where we have Vance going, we have Kushner going, we have Witkoff going, and they're heading to Islamabad for the talks tomorrow. We don't know yet if the Islamic Republic is going. They're still going on about this 10-point plan, and others are saying, no, it's the 15-point plan. Then someone says in the chat here, USA better not agree to any of those demands. I agree. And then someone here says in the chat, hear me out, rest of NATO countries are right in sticking to defense, but that does not mean that NATO countries could not help. Afghanistan was US-led coalition of the willing beyond NATO. Yeah, coalition of the willing. Although Iran is not Afghanistan, is not Iraq, but Iran's a proper country. And the reality is 90%, 95% of Iranians want the end of this regime. Whereas there is a base in Afghanistan for the Taliban, sadly. And there was support for Saddam Hussein, sadly, too. Although Iraq was a largely Shia country where only, I think, 12, 15% was Sunni. And Saddam Hussein was Sunni. And that was always the modus operandus in terms of the Middle East. Always get the minorities to rule over the majority. For example, in Syria, it was Alawites of Assad. I think they represented less than 5% to rule Syria. It was just the way they did things. Iranians refer to the British as the fox, I think. But someone says here that, this is interesting, reports that China is resupplying Iran. I heard this as well. They are already playing games. I don't love JD Vance either. Rubio was not a fan in the past, but he looks better than JD. Okay. So it looks like China playing games because China was supposedly involved in the ceasefire, that they put pressure on the Islamic Republic to make this ceasefire, because Islamic Republic has made Iran a proxy of China. They've basically sold almost everything to China. They had this 25-year agreement or something, and nobody knows fully what that agreement is in full detail. So you've got Russia and China, but it's more China that's the important thing, because the Russian bear has become a koala with Ukraine and are busy with what's going on with that, but are enjoying, I would say, what's going on in terms of Europe not really backing up the US, NATO unwilling to help in any shape or fashion, people not willing to do anything with the Strait of Hormuz. Russia's getting the popcorn out. Russia's getting the popcorn out. It's the reality. So within that, tomorrow, either they're rocking up and turning up and they're going to have these talks, which I think they will somehow. And then people are going to be at tenterhooks what comes out of this. Are we going to have a flurry of tweets, constructive, in a positive atmosphere, mutual respect, all the same kind of things from Abbas, the Foreign Secretary of the Islamic Republic? The one who looks like a rodent. So, or are they not going to turn up at all? And then what's the composition of the Islamic Republic team? So someone says here, China supplying Iran is no news. Everyone in defense in Ukraine has known this for years. We also know how it got there. Qatar and various . So some people say that the delegation is going to be led the Islamic Republic by Qalabaf, who seems to be the anointing one of this so-called new regime. I want to put this loud and clear, and I've said this on other platforms. There has been no regime change. No regime change. It's the biggest BS of all time. The biggest BS is gaslighting. It's an absolute nonsense. It's an absolute lie. I'm being frank with you folks. I always say how it is in being real. Same president, Massoud, the cardiologist, the same foreign secretary in Abbas, the same head of judiciary in Ejai, the same chief of the head of the IRGC, the chief of the IRGC in Vahidi, the same head of police in Radan. So, and then reportedly Khamenei 2.0 in Mujtaba, Khamenei's son. Although I've got serious question marks over his state, really. I think it's the supreme leader, it's the ghost of the supreme leader. He's either seriously incapacitated or this is complete BS. I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. People say it doesn't make it, obviously, he won't say certain things live or whatever because of security concerns. Yeah, I get that. But there's not even a recorded video message or anything of any description. Even Qalabaf or Laranjani and those came out in their things. People say, "Well, look what look what happened to Laranjani then afterwards." That wasn't because of that. That was because of other intelligence, I think, from Iranians. I think they know where all of them are. It's just a choice thing. They know where all of them are. That's the reality. So there's been no regime change. And still, the same regime who has still the proxies in Hezbollah and in the Houthis in Yemen, still has its nuclear dust, still doing enrichment, still has its missiles, although depleted, still has its drones. There is no regime change at all, whatsoever, 100%. Okay? So someone says here, regime change is a message to the Islamic Republic to demonstrate the United States' good faith in negotiations. I don't take it seriously. Yeah, I hear what you mean. I see what you mean. So Qalabaf is, someone says here, this is all a ploy to prevent oil shocks. That is true as well. Trump is sensitive to the markets, period, and also is well aware of this. Being a businessman before he ever entered in politics, I used to watch him on The Apprentice. And the world economy is beholden. And they know that. I didn't realize that 20% of the fertilizer went through the Strait of Hormuz as well. So it's important to factor that in. That's 100% a valid point. You never can say 100%, 99%. But apparently the delegation of the Islamic Republic is going to be led by Qalabaf, then Abbas, the foreign secretary, and then I think he's deputy, I think. But the plot thickens because apparently, being reported by Iran International, you can take that sometimes with a pinch of salt, Iran International, but nevertheless, it does do some good news. Reporting that there's an almighty fight going on within the regime regarding who is rocking up and what powers do they have to agree anything. And the word has it that the most powerful person in Iran right now, in terms of the Islamic Republic, that is, because the leader of Iran right now is Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. That's the leader of Iran right now. But in terms of the Islamic Republic, who are in Iran, occupying Iran, the most powerful person is not Qalabaf, is Vahidi. according to more and more reports. The one who's got a dent in his head. Prior to Vince, he got promoted like 4 or 5 times. So he was a man on the rise, a man on the rise, right? So then you have people coming on Twitter, everything else, these so-called influencers. I'm just reading some headlines. Who come from Iran. They have what's called a white card. They're allowed to go on social media and Twitter. Do you remember what Abbas said? That he speaks for the whole entire nation. I don't think so, mate. You speak for the Islamic Republic. You don't speak for Iran. You never have done, and you never will do, right? This anti-Iran regime. So, but they get special privileges whilst Iranians are in digital blackout, and it carries on, because they don't want the truth. I'm just seeing a headline here. The UK is preparing a new version of a major plan to ready the nation from the military and police to hospitals and industry for potential transition to war. The head of the armed forces told Sky News. I repeat, the UK is preparing a new version of a major plan to ready the nation from the military and police to hospitals and industry for a potential transition to war, the head of the armed forces told Sky News. Someone says here, UK is considering joining the war in Iran after all the statements by Keir Starmer that we will not be dragged into this war. Let me check that out. That's true. Let me check that out. Do invite everyone to come on YouTube, Internal Iran, the channel. Give me some love, folks. I'm burning the midnight oil whilst working a hard day, fighting the good fight. I don't see that. Although Sky News is late on things. Legacy media is dead, isn't it? Citizen journalism, that is the media. So this is what Vance said in advance of peace talks, right? JD Vance said, warns Iran not to play in peace talks. As the president of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we certainly are willing to extend the open hand. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. Right? This is the guy who really didn't care about regime change anyway. It says here, where Brits are already in a war with the Islamic regime, we just refuse to admit it, which is why we look so pathetic. Someone says here, the UK has more admirals than it does warships. Man, I miss the Iron Lady. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. The Iron Lady referring to Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher, the woman with the handbag. Do you remember? She was a leader. Whatever you say, whether you like her or not, she was a leader. She was the one who said to Ronald Reagan, Ronald, don't go all wobbly on me, Ronald. She was the Iron Lady. She was the one who defeated the Argentinians in the Falklands War, which changed her political fortunes because she was tanking in the polls, deeply unpopular. And then the rest is history. I think she won 3 elections thereafter, and she never lost an election. She got the Judas effect in terms of her own party doing the dirty on her. The Conservative Party, they love a bit of that, don't they? Look what's happened in recent times. They've had more leaders than most people have had hot dinners. Never quite recovered. That's why reform is leading and likely to be in a very strong position, because I think the British people have had enough. They don't want none of the above. They just want something different. They don't trust Conservatives, and Labour is at 10% in terms of popularity right now. Deeply unpopular. And he is a deeply unpopular leader. But I can't find that bit on Sky News, but sometimes it's late. So then we had, well, now Politics UK is also saying it. The UK is preparing a new plan to ready the whole nation for the transition of war. God. So someone's reporting Islamic Republic government planes, Iran 04, Iran 05, appear to be currently heading towards Pakistan, likely for ceasefire negotiations with the US in Islamabad tomorrow. Someone says, has the Supreme Leader shown up? So someone says she defended the Falklands. The UK needs the capabilities to defend all their interests, both foreign and domestic. Agreed. Agreed. So the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who's been quite an appalling Foreign Secretary, really, I think, quite weak. So the Strait of Hormuz must fully reopen without restriction or fees. The Islamic Republic have become like Somalian pirates. Is this true, folks? So Galabaf, not only they then add on extras, right, in terms of requirements to the ceasefire, and they're wanting the release of $7 billion in frozen Iranian funds held in Qatari banks. There are reports that the US has authorized the release of $7 billion in frozen Iranian funds held in Qatar banks. Is that true? That would be terrible. That would be terrible if true. Be like Obama, like. So an analyst says the regime doesn't understand. It doesn't matter if it's J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, or Jared Kushner in Islamabad, or all three. All have been involved in the decision-making process since January 2025. The final decision maker is President Trump. It's true. Okay, so it's been reported that the delegation led by Ghalibaf has arrived in Islamabad ahead of tomorrow talks with the US, according to Iranian media. Iran continues messaging that the talks are conditional on its demands being met. How can look? It's either surrender or humiliation if something is agreed, in my view. Because that 10-point plan is defeat terms for the US and Israel. And the other is tantamount for the Islamic Republic to accept that they have to surrender, that they have been militarily defeated. Militarily, they've been defeated. Politically, no. And I say that because for me, without regime change, there isn't a victory. You can't claim a victory because their version of success is surviving. To survive. That is their version. So, and then we have Truth Social posts of Trump because he came out with a flurry of them, didn't he? I think he came out with a few. I'm just looking it up exactly to read them out to you. Multitasking, all that. You know what they say about men and multitasking. So Trump came out with one of them where he said that the most powerful reset. And people were saying, well, what reset? Does that mean that there's a deal? Has there been a deal already kind of agreed? This is all theater stuff. And then other people said, no, it's the having to go back to Congress after 60 days. I think you can extend it for another 30 or something to do a reset on that politically before they get involved. Because prior to that, the US president can do a conflict, but in terms of war, an actual declaration of war, it has to be done by Congress, or if it goes beyond a certain period of time, to go back to Congress. So some people say it's to do with that in terms of reset. Others say, oh, has there ever been a deal done? And then he said other things where he's not happy in terms of the Islamic Republic being dishonorable in not opening up the Strait of Hormuz, and they better not be charging in terms of fees. Well, they're doing both. And they've broken that side of the ceasefire, right? The ceasefire was to have a ceasefire of 2 weeks, but on condition that they would open up the Strait of Hormuz. They've neither opened up the Strait of Hormuz, and also they're charging for it. So someone says the additional 30 days is to withdraw troops and military assets, not continue. Okay, interesting. Thank you for that. So he then came out with further Truth Social posts today where he said, what did he say now? He said that the Islamic Republic, he refers it to as Iran, doesn't have the cards. It has no cards apart from holding the world temporarily a hostage with the Strait of Hormuz. And that will be dealt with. And the only reason that the negotiators are alive is they need someone to negotiate with. And they better make a deal. Those were the flurry of tweets on Truth Social. But then yesterday he was talking about how we're going to make a great, beautiful peace. Then there was some mutterings about having a joint control of the Strait of Hormuz in terms of tolls between the US and Iran. There's a lot of stuff going on. Is Trump the new Alex Ferguson, who used to be the manager of Manchester United, in terms of being the king of mind games? Because he just makes your head spin, folks. From 1 minute to the next, and 1 minute to the next. It's like, which Trump has shown up today. And I think most of it is all deliberate. Plus, people say he's the last person who spoke to him in the room, then affected his view, etc. But Trump is very smart. He's really smart. People don't underestimate him in terms of smartness. He's really smart. It's all he is who he is, not cultivated. He is who he is. But people do underestimate him time and time again. You underestimate him at his peril. But you do worry as an Iranian or Iranians or those in Israel, there's a saying in football here in the UK, I think it's a London saying, squeaky bum time in terms of being on edge. Oh, is it going to happen? Is it not? Hopefully not. So someone says regime requires payment for safe passage through Hormuz. In order to make that payment, the US needs to lift sanctions unless you use Chinese or Indian ships. Regime is not entirely stupid, sadly. No, it's not. It's very devious, very cunning. Very devious, very cunning, indeed. You don't stay 47 years without that. People do underestimate their cunningness. They mock the mullahs and all that, but there is a sophisticated think tank around them as well. That's how they've managed to stay in power. And people who have enabled it around them because of money and making money from the regime. So it's an emotional roller coaster as we approach the talks tomorrow. How is it going to unfold? They do want their payment in Bitcoin now, yeah. Even the Islamic Republic are Bitcoiners. Apparently, they're one of the biggest miners. That's why there might have been a dip at one point on Bitcoin. So where is this all heading? Where is this all heading? Deal or no deal? The Iranians don't want a deal. They only want a surrender deal, not a deal that keeps the regime, because it would effectively be North Korea. This is the final battle. This is the final moment. Failed negotiations, as someone says here. Escalation. It's getting a bit messy, folks, this. I think without a ground up, it's a bit challenging. But with the ground up, I think this regime's never been weaker. And in a lot of ways, it is a paper tiger, but it's a cunning paper tiger. And it can be defeated. And Iranians are ready to finish the job, wanting to finish the job. People say, oh, how come Iranians are not out? They must be stupid in saying that. Israel, US have repeatedly said, do not come out yet until there's a sign. Iranians came out on January the 8th and 9th from their minions, up and down and all over, after the order from Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, King Reza Pahlavi. Someone says it definitely is an emotional roller coaster. My goodness. I think Trump is doing some serious psyops right now, just like what happened on February 26th and 27th. Yeah, could be. Could be. Maybe it allows them to track Alabama. Draw them out. I don't know, thinking out loud. So it's nerve-wracking times, folks, in the end. There's a lot on this. It's a civilizational battle. It's a battle of good versus evil in terms of Iranians against the regime inside Iran. Iranians have demonstrated and said who they want, and that is Pahlavi. We want Pahlavi back. The real Iran, the true Iran, not the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's also an existential moment for Israel. I truly believe that as well. A wounded beast is very dangerous, and they will come back bigger. And next time round, they might not be a Bibi. They won't be a Trump. You don't know who you got. They're not always leaders that can lead like lions. We have a lot of leaders like donkeys in the West anyway. So they want to survive because they want to move it on, get to points like the World Cup, midterms, the Israel election. They could have a different political landscape altogether. It could be a different story altogether. Midterms, maybe the Democrats do better. It always happens in US elections when one party's in power. He pulled off an incredible election victory in terms of taking Congress and the Senate, and the incredible win in taking the presidency, and has the Supreme Court. Never seen anything like it, really. But normally the Democrats, when the Republicans are in, and vice versa, take on the Congress. Someone says, I think it's 1 a.m. Pakistan right now. Yeah, I think so. I'm not an expert at Pakistan time. Someone says leaders everywhere are focused on tactics for polling better. That's absolutely correct. The only sustainable strategy is to ensure downfall of the regime. Yeah, tactics without strategy is the most painful path to defeat. The art of war. Absolutely true. Spot on. So there's a lot resting on this, and America's a superpower resting on this. Because if this goes horribly wrong, God forbid, the US will lose its superpower status, in my view. Right? US has never lost a war. Military-wise, there's no competition. They've completely beaten up the Islamic Republic. But they knew that from the offing. That wasn't their strategy to begin with. Their strategy is to do as much as they can to then lead up to negotiations and then to try to worm their way out of it. So at the end of the day, we're now in a situation where America's status as a world power is on the line, as a superpower rather, a civilizational battle. Iran is on the line. It is the final battle. And other countries are looking and waiting and watching and seeing, Russia, China, etc., and others. Because if they sense this is the blueprint of victory, this is how you defeat the mighty United States, this is how you win, then God help everybody else to what comes next. God help everybody else to what comes next. So I'm going to do more of these lives, folks. It was just me having a monologue. I've spoken all day. I speak all day. And then I've spoken for 1 hour and 12 minutes, but by myself, all by myself. But I'm hoping to try to make it more video and radio. I've got to plan it better in getting more people on as a panel because I want to bring the joy and the beauty of spaces, which people love, to this concept. The problem is a lot of people like to be behind an avatar on spaces, so they don't want to be on video. This is the issue. This is the issue. But I want it. I want to make this change in terms of video radio. I want it to be video radio, and it won't be every day. I don't have the time. I run a business and everything else that goes with it. But I do my bit, even not eating, not having any gourmet subsidy. Right? Shocking. Gourmet subsidy is king. But I'm just going to give my thoughts. I'm going to hang out, chat with you, be real with you, get people on, do lives on X, YouTube, spread the word, tell a friend tells another friend. It helps me to do this, encourages me to do this, gives me the motivation to do this as well. So as a community, I said, you can't just rely on one platform. Because if that platform shuts down, then you lose each other. Believe me, it happens. So if you can, someone says, it's your opinion the negotiations will be positive or negative? Oh, my heart wants it negative. My mind is also gearing to the point that it'd be negative. Because their position seems so afar, unless this is all theatre and smoke. And they're in fact much closer than what is being portrayed. But the Islamic Republic, and I'll leave you on this, relies on 3 pillars: death to America, death to Israel, and the hijab. So if you take away death to America, take away death to Israel, and what, you've got only the hijab, you've really got no Islamic Republic. It's not a government, it's a constant revolution that tries to perpetuate itself, and it relies on chaos and mayhem to survive, to be alive. So it needs this. It needs this chaos. It needs this constant thing to keep it afloat. And it has this hardcore element of jihadis, etc. That, you know, their supporters are people in Yemen, Iraq, in Palestine at times, etc. And unfortunately, a minority of bad people in Iran as well. There is a minority. We have to own that. There is a minority. The vast majority of Iranians, 95%, want free of this occupation and this nightmare. So they've got the hardliners, and they have the so-called little more, they've got the other side who are more interested in their pocket, their power, their status, their money, etc., that would want to do some type of deal. Because the first rule of the Islamic Republic is to keep the Islamic Republic. Yeah, and then you've got the useful idiots of communists, etc., and those people that know 2/3 of nothing of Iran, that are enablers with all of this. So if Trump holds firm and what he says is what he means, there will be no deal apart from a surrender of the Islamic Republic. It could be all theatre here because the Bush carrier is still coming. People often say, don't listen to what Trump says, listen to what goes on. And the Islamic Republic feel like they're better off keeping the fight going because they have nowhere to go, nowhere to run. It's not like a pro-Western regime that falls. They can go to other countries. What? They've got Venezuela. They haven't got that anymore. Maduro is gone. You can always make a trip to North Korea. Moscow, we know what's happened with Assad. Apparently he had food poisoning, allegedly. So their options are limited, and they feel like they're better off. They're never going to get it better. They're never going to have better. Because a lot of this is not just the money, it's the status, it's the control. You know, these are very, very bad people. They are the Nazis of our times. So they feel like they're better off. They're like a roulette table. They're better off carrying on gambling this conflict than to accept those terms, which would be surrender, would tantamount to surrender, unless they get their deal, which is their 10-point plan, which would then mean a catastrophe for the US and everything else. And a lot of the jihadis and everyone will be going, yeah, we won. That's what you're dealing with, folks. So someone says, of course, every situation is different. However, there is a legal precedent to reset the War Powers Act using things like ceasefires. See, that might be the strategy all along. And on that bombshell, if you are enjoying the lives, watch out for me in terms of the lives. Do subscribe to Eternal Iran. Doesn't cost you anything, folks, at all. Just subscribe to it. It enables me to distribute the message more, enables me to have guests on the show. I'll carry out the podcast at some point when I have time. Time is our most precious commodity of all. Successful Iranians, etc. And get people on the panel. Have debates, maybe have a good old argument as well. Good old ding dong. I know some of you like that in spaces. You like the back and forths and the debates between different perspectives of everything. So it'd be great. So someone said, Trump said unconditional surrender, but Iranians have conditions to start the negotiations. Very complicated. Yeah, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, folks. We shall see. As always, time reveals all.